Hi, everyone. I am Entertainment Weekly's Christian Holub, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this WonderCon 2021 panel about Season 2 of Pennyworth. We have creator Bruno Heller here, along with stars Jack Bannon, Ben Aldridge, Emma Paetz, Simon Manyonda, and we are ready to start talking about this season. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So I've got some questions that are going to be kind of directed to everybody, some questions that are going to be maybe directed to two or three of you, but if you ever feel like you have anything to say, especially you, Bruno, since you're the big brain, always kind of feel free to jump in and talk.
What's that, big brain?
And I want to open just kind of with a general question that I think probably applies to everyone, but is about Season 2 as a whole. You know, a big change from Season 1 is that this season is kind of taking place in wartime. We have this active kind of military conflict happening in the background of the season. And so, you know, Bruno, how did that kind of change the storytelling to have this kind of different setting?
It's I mean, it's a natural progression from Season 1 because, you know, the big arc of the story is essentially an origin story of how the world came to be a world in which characters like Batman were necessary. So this is, you know, it's the genesis of that world, and to that degree, it has to be a tale of a descent into dystopia, and it's a to put it pretentiously, it's how societies fall apart, even with the best intentions, and the very specific horrible thing about civil wars is that it pits brothers against brothers, sisters against sisters, families fall apart in the same way that the nation falls apart. It turns what were personal disagreements and aggravations into political conflict. So, like I say, a natural progression, and frankly, from a kind of showbiz angle, it's the intensity and the stakes are cranked up several notches. And this being a DC universe, this is both very recognizable as the kind of things that happen in a civil war, but it's also 13 degrees darker, stranger, funnier, more DC.
Definitely. Well, Jack and Emma, I kind of wanted to ask you guys about this specifically because I feel like Alfie and Martha represent kind of different reactions to this war, which is, you know, Alfie feels like he would rather be doing anything else than fighting in a war right now. He wants to get out of there. He wants to make money for himself. And Martha, on the other hand, comes off like a very committed partisan and really believes in her cause. So yeah, if you guys want to talk about kind of the journeys they find themselves on in the middle of this war.
I think for Alfie, as Bruno said, you know, it's a natural, Season 2 is a natural progression on from Season 1, and so much happened to him in Season 1, losing Esme, losing his father, and being responsible for that, even though he is a man of strong morals and strong feelings about the country and the state in which they're in Season 2, I think he gave so much of himself over to others in Season 1 that he's kind of come to a conclusion. He's perhaps a little colder and harder in Season 2, and you know, sort of is out for himself and his mum and family and friends, more so. So I think he does have feelings towards what's going on naturally, but he kind of chooses to ignore them as a survival instinct, really.
I think that from Martha's perspective, she's she's still as idealistic as she was, if not more so than the first season. But I think she really kind of finds her purpose in fighting with the League, and I think it kind of sets her free in a lot of ways. She's like able to defy the expectations of what it means to be a woman in the 60s in normal circumstances. But interestingly, I've kind of been thinking about it because I've been watching the episodes over the last few days for this, and it's interesting with Martha, because she's not from there, but she's in the middle of this war. But this idea that maybe if she wanted to, she could leave at any point, and she chooses not to. But I hadn't made the connection before that it's been strange with the COVID crisis now in the UK, and that colliding with Brexit and all the stuff at the same time, and myself being a foreigner here at the same time. This idea that maybe I have a different relationship to it than all the other people around me do, because in some level there's a subconscious thing of like, what, maybe I could just get out if I really wanted to. But I don't know if Martha maybe just chooses to silence. I think she probably would just silence. I wasn't working with this knowledge while we were shooting, so yeah. That's
awesome. I like the extra insight.
I would add to that that it's Martha's position is very like a lot of the people that went to the Spanish Civil War and the international brigades, that there's, you know, in your own country, politics are very complicated. You know, it's hard not to see all the nuances and details and see, you know, how even your own position is compromised. But the beauty of a war in a foreign country, however much you understand it, is that there's a purity about it. She can see clearly who the good guys and the bad guys are. So it's liberating for her. Excuse me for speaking for you, Emma, but that's what you're putting across is, and it's part of that Batman persona that some people have that urge and need to fight for something worthwhile, and it's almost impossible to find something pure and true to fight for, and that's what she's searching for and found here.
Yeah, I would say from Thomas's perspective, it almost feels like she also putting words in your mouth, Emma, but just like an observation from Thomas that is that she wants to be fighting a war. Like it feels like it's almost like a relief that she has from his perspective, she's really involving herself as much as she can in that and putting herself right in the center, right in danger. And it's like, it's absolutely where she wants to be. It feels like from him. I don't think he thinks she should be there.
Yeah, and obviously Thomas kind of takes a different stance on things, which is a source of tension for them, at least early in the season. That, you know, he's CIA and he's businessman, so he's, I don't know, he's kind of being pulled between different places, and that kind of angers Martha, who is able to see it very black and white. He doesn't seem to see it as black and white.
Yeah, I think it's a poison chalice, the fact that he's station chief, and he thinks that might come with a certain sense of autonomy and in decision making, and it absolutely doesn't. He's there in actioning and kind of setting about other people's wants and desires, political desires, and and has to make a huge compromise on his instincts, his moral instincts straight away, which kind of sets about the tension that's always been there between Martha and Thomas, I think, and it grows even more, I think, in this series because of what Thomas orders to happen to Archbishop Potter.
Simon, I want to bring you in too. We kind of don't meet Lucius until a little bit of the way into season 2, and until this war has been going on for a while. But at that point, he sees something. He sees the demonstration of Stormcloud, and that really seems to create a change in him. That he's got to get out of where he is. He's got to do anything he can to, war is one thing, but this super weapon is something else. It seems. Can you talk a little bit about his perspective and what kind of prompts his change and his energy in the second half of the season?
Yeah, well, I think that Lucius is unaware of what he's helping to create in terms of Stormcloud. he's a CIA plant in there, but he doesn't know, like the sort of damaging effects that storm cloud can have. And when he sees it, he has to take action. And actually, when I was watching the season back, I had because I came in on season 4, I had really forgotten about what happened in the early episodes, even though I'd read them. And I was really shocked that Thomas Wayne had sort of ordered the killing of Archbishop Potter, is his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really shocked by that. And so I was sort of quite glad that Lucius had come in and really sort of shaken him when he meets him and tells him, like this can't run, and is maybe part of Thomas's kind of change, like change of direction in that sense. But Lucius's, dilemma is one of like science and ethics. And Bruno had sort of given me Oppenheimer as a kind of inspiration, and then from there I was able to kind of use my imagination, also sort of like research about that kind of how science can be used detrimentally, I suppose.
And I'd add to that with the arrival of Lucius Fox, you've really got you now have the 4 people that create Batman.
Yeah.
And it's precisely, they're not just sort of physically, but their sensibilities and their mentalities and their talents, you put them together, and with all the conflicts that creates, you have the Batman character, which is precisely about, law and order versus revenge, humanity versus science, like how far are you willing to go to do the right thing, doing wrong things in order to do right things. With Lucius, now that the nursery, if you like, is complete. And I'm really excited for season 3, because now we've got all the pillars in place, and the world, as you'll see in this season, the world is changing very rapidly, and it's kind of an acceleration of what all of us have been seeing over the last 50 years, is this kind of race towards a strange new world that no one is really going to be familiar with and comfortable in. And Batman is the modern mythical character that struggles with all those contradictions.
Totally. Yeah, I really like the way that you kind of sense, even if not Batman's presence, his kind of aura of the character from some of the things that go on this season. And one thing in particular I really like is, anybody who's familiar with Batman stories, comics, movies, whatever, that one of his sacrosanct rules is not killing, even if he's got to throw the Joker or whoever into Arkham Asylum 900 times, and he'll break out every time, that's still better than killing him. And that morality, he struggles with it, and I see the character struggling with it this season in particular. It's a war, people are getting shot, people are dying, and so as a result, Alfie kills some people, hurt some people, and yet what I really enjoy is that he really has to wrestle with that, even in the context of this war where it seems like killing is fair game. He really faces consequences both from the world and kind of from himself. Jack, if you wanted to talk about some of those things he wrestles with.
Well, I think, I agree. And I think whenever I read the scripts, beforehand, I was very aware of this looming Batman thing. And I think season 2, and certainly what this is for, the latter half of season 2, he decides not to go to America, and he keeps, all the sort of moral compass thing is always there. But there's still some instances, I've read, there were some scripts in season 2, there was some instances in first drafts where Alfred killed police officers and things like that, and we were like, I don't think that happened. No. So we're working within this world of, it's brilliant because we're pre-comics and it's a fantastic new kind of DC London, so we can almost do what we like. But then we're all very conscious of this, you know, who all of our choices, it feels now, as the characters that we're creating, all of our choices feed into the Batman thing, which will come much later. But the choices we make and the people we become inform who he is. So, yeah, I do feel conscious of that.
Yeah. And Simon and Ben, you know, I think there's even an aspect to Thomas and Lucius face their own version of this when they're kind of told by the CIA that the CIA is fine with Stormcloud being used. They'd love like to see a free test of this weapon that they have no culpability for, and that really seems to strike something in them as well, especially considering you know, what Thomas had done with the Archbishop earlier this season, that like, no, it is not acceptable to go beyond, you know, to cross a certain line or to, you know, allow people to be killed for some other war purpose.
Yeah, I think what Simon said earlier about Lucius kind of shakes Thomas back into the more idealized version of himself. I think throughout season 1 we saw him become quite jaded and realized that actually he was kind of having to perform the dirty work of the higher ups, and then we see him wrestle with that a little bit at the beginning of season 2. But by the time Lucius walks into his office, Thomas has kind of accepted that and seems pretty resigned to the fact that he doesn't have any influence. And then he, you know, through their first scenes together, I think and realizing the magnitude of what Stormcloud is, I think they kind of form this resistance together. But I think also Thomas surprises Lucius. He doesn't really let him inside of his plan, and then he ends up kind of making the better choice in the end. But yeah, I think he's thrown by Lucius at the first as well, and doesn't quite know what to make of him either.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key difference between Lucius and Thomas at that point is that Lucius's hands are dirty. You know, like they're really, really dirty. Like he was there and he needs to clean them. And so, you know, he goes to Thomas and he tells him, "Look, you need to see what I've seen. You know, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it." And it's interesting, you know, just sort of casting forward to Batman and to who Lucius Fox becomes. Like, and you know, that it's to me it becomes clear why Lucius invents non-lethal weapons. You know, because he knows that he can invent such dangerous stuff. You know, and he's been in a dangerous time around dangerous people, and where, you know, Alfie can teach the young Batman to fight, you know, and to be a lethal weapon in his body. You know, but Lucius goes, okay, well, look, like I can make you stuff to protect you and to be able to save the world, but I'm not going to make stuff that allows you to kill people, which I could do, you know, because Stormcloud, you know, I could have, you know, like I could make a little thing that would just go shh and then gas, but no, he's not going to do that. And that's really interesting for me, because I feel like it, because as I was saying to Bruno a little while ago, actually, you know, like the technology, we're in like the 60s now. You know, the technology is not the same as what we are used to seeing with, say, like in the Christopher Nolan world. You know, it's very different. So there's got to be a technological journey, you know, as well as an emotional and psychological journey. And I'm curious as how the psyche and the emotion connects to his science and technical life.
I was watching you arrive into it last night, Simon, and I love the little gadgets that he has already, like the tape in the shoe and the little
shoe thing. So good, yeah.
So cool. The skeleton key with you know, you can open and the little microphone on the badge, all the kind of like spy tech, all that.
Not at like James Bond technology level, not quite at that modern Batman technology level.
And I have to say, it took me weeks to build all that stuff and work it out, but it does work.
That's awesome.
But I, you know, further to what Simon's saying, is for all scientists, it's a constant process. It's like science keeps moving forward, so that particular moral dilemma keeps coming up. Like any scientific advance can be used for good or evil. So it's a constant battle, you know. As with, you know, within the Batman universe itself, that's the story. It's like, do you fight ethically, or do you fight with every weapon at your disposal? There's never a clear and good answer to that. So these are like human beings with flaws and urges and anger in themselves that have to struggle with that, you know?
Totally.
Never simply good guys versus bad guys. That's the beauty of the Batman universe, as opposed to some other universes of this type.
Definitely. Well, I love what you guys are saying about you know, thinking about how the characters' actions now kind of you can see the lead planting the seeds for their relationships to Batman, or how they influence Batman. And obviously to you know, all four of these characters are very important to that, but Thomas and Martha are the ones who literally make Batman, which we start to see the beginnings of this season. And Bruno, I think you've talked before about how, you know, they kind of together, they kind of represent the different sides of the Batman personality and his approach to things. So I kind of wanted to ask you guys, Emma and Ben, because I so enjoy the characters' interactions on the show, but what would you say it is kind of about Thomas and Martha that both attracts them to each other and also repels them when they reach those points where they think that they're so far apart?
God, what is Martha attracted to in Thomas?
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I think most of what attracts them to each other is the same as what repels them.
Mm.
I mean, where we see them right now, arguably they have a very dysfunctional but it's pretty explosive. I think that, I don't know, I think that we started to see I think they genuinely really didn't like each other at the beginning of season 1.
Right.
And then I think after all the stuff with Thomas and Aleister Crowley, I think there was a moment where Martha registered some sort of kinship with Thomas, where she recognized something in him. And then I think from that, it's been building on from that. I think that Martha is much more emotionally invested at the top of season 2 than she thought she would be. And I don't think that she opens up to people like that ever. So she's both surprised by her own feelings and then completely discouraged that Thomas is such a yeah. What's Thomas like about Martha?
Yeah, what's the Thomas side of this?
This is like one of those awful first date shows. Would you date this person again?
I think Emma's right. I think what attracts them. I think for him, he has to work so hard for her approval, and he hardly ever gets it. And she always has him up against the wall for what he's doing or what he said or how he's interacted with her. And I don't think there's hardly anyone else in his life that has that effect on him.
Yeah, but he does and says some appalling things to her.
Well,
break it up.
But
she challenges him morally hugely as well, I think.
Yeah.
He's getting on the straight and he's doing something right, and then she can correct him and say, no, that doesn't sit right with me. You know, there's and I think that is not that it's entertaining to him, but God, he's never met a woman that does that with him ever before.
It's entertaining to everybody else. I mean, one thing I will say is that we sort of I do my storyline with Ryan Fletcher, who plays Dave Boy, and that kind of stuff one side, and then Ben and Emma do their thing. And then when we come together, I mean, in the cast tent, it's exactly the same. Ben, Thomas and Martha just going at each other, and me and Ryan are like, what? So it works.
It might have into real life a little bit, yeah.
I love that.
But to be fair to Thomas, I think, you know, what what Thomas has underlying all everything else, which is an unconscious need for a rebel like Martha, is he's solid. He is a sort of, is precisely the problem is, like, everyone needs a father figure, but you don't necessarily want a father figure. And so it's almost precisely his conventionality and his steadiness and his reliability, and you know what he's going to do in a given situation, that is both reassuring and irritating for someone like Martha. So it's a constant push and pull of wanting independence, and then having this guy who's offering, solid love. It's both attractive and repulsive. If you don't mind me saying so, Mr. Aldridge.
Yeah. And I feel like there's times where Thomas, like, kind of I don't know if you guys would agree with this, where, like, by the time he opens his mouth or is saying something, he's kind of already made all these calculations or compromises or whatever. So by the time he's saying something, he's got it all figured out, and he's like, well, this is what we're going to do, and this will be great, blah, 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 blah. And Martha's someone who's like, no, I'm not following you. Like, no, this doesn't seem right to me. And then, and that's kind of a fun, explosive element of it to me, just kind of different ways that they think and
yeah, she's much more impulsive than him, and sort of goes with her gut rather than planning things out.
And her feelings. It's like it's a kind of microcosm of the the whatever you want to call it, the battle of the sexes during that period, like patronizing men who have been brought up to think they know everything. Yeah. And women who, not to quote Betty Friedan, but a kind of mysterious sense that there is something wrong with this status quo, and it's very hard to push against it, because you're pushing against the people you love and life itself. And the main thing is hopefully it's funny. Ben and Emma are just very funny together, and real.
Funny and sexy. Don't forget sexy.
Yeah. When it,
yeah, I especially enjoy it because in some ways it's become a cliche or a trope that every Batman story now has to start with them being violently gunned down, and we've all seen that scene done over and over in so many different ways, and so I'm really enjoying getting to know them as humans and as people who were young, dumb, and in love once upon a time. Awesome. Well, I did want to ask, since the show is called Pennyworth, and we've got these four pillars, but Alfie is definitely at the center of it. I'm kind of curious for the three of you, besides Jack, how would you say your characters see Alfred in season 2 or as season 2 goes on? We kind of have, I forget what episode it is, but there is that, I think towards the end of one of them, we have that wonderful Casablanca moment between Thomas and Alfred, like this is the start of a beautiful friendship. But yeah, I'm curious kind of where you think your characters are, because obviously we know Alfred will end up being such a steadfast and important part of their lives, but maybe they don't know that yet.
That Casablanca moment is a real relief to Thomas, I think, because Alfred has managed to give him incredibly short shrift throughout both seasons. Where every other dynamic Thomas comes across, he kind of he usually holds the status, I would say, a lot of the time. I mean, not with Martha, but other people. I think Alfred has managed to kind of throw him a little bit, and you get a little sense of Thomas, and he even says it probably about 3 or 4 times over season 1 and 2. We're friends, right? Like he really wants to the point where it got a bit embarrassing for me to having to say it right.
I remember you saying to him, "What? There was a scene in your office. I think when I'm buying the plane tickets, and we did a rehearsal, and the director was like, 'Yeah, it's great,' and then Ben is like, can you give me something? It's been 2 years and there's nothing. And I was like, all right, fine.
It was getting to the point where I was like, all this rejection, you know? It's almost really hard.
It's in the script, it's not me, you know, we're very...
Not only to recruit him, which is part of his job, and you know, he's absolutely a prime asset, but I think it's more than that as well. He hates the fact that he's so distrusted, and that Alfie has got his number, rightly so.
Yeah.
Not being able to convince him, you know, and otherwise. So yeah, that's an interesting one. And I think Thomas's hopes after 7 is that they will perhaps start working together more, or there'll be more trust there. See that relationship that we know must move into a deep loyalty, if not a friendship. That hopefully we'll see more of that happening.
Awesome. Emma, I'm always curious about how Martha feels, because as we've said, she's such a committed soldier, and she's so passionate about the cause and anything. But it feels like anytime she's in a scene with Aziz, anytime she's talking to Aziz about anything, like, oh, here's the idea. Oh, we should do this. It feels like Aziz is always like, great idea. First, we need Alfred. We need him. He's the guy. Does she have any kind of, I don't know, jealousy or rivalry about that?
Yeah, probably in that. Well, I think that at the top of season 2, she's a bit repulsed by how opportunistic Alfred seems to be to her in ways that she finds immoral.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that she probably really leans into that in the way that you would if you fancied a guy, and then you'd find you'd be like, that guy.
I told
you. I think she finds ways to write Alfred off because it was an embarrassing moment, you know, and not associated with happy memories. But more than that, I think she's morally frustrated with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's not behaving in a way. He's upsetting her in the same way that Thomas does a lot. They're not behaving. She has a very rigid sense of morality, and she holds herself to a very strict code. And when the people around her don't match that, she's it's not good enough for her.
And Simon, you know, we've seen Lucius mostly with Thomas, but Alfred is the one who gets him out of his situation and kind of rescues him from the Union. I don't know if he has any feelings about that.
Well, I think, you know, Lucius doesn't need people to like him. He's not trying to beg friend with anybody. And so I think that he really just takes people at face value. You know, what you present to Lucius is what he's going to take. And so he meets Alfred, yes, rescuing him, but very violently, you know. And so he's judging him on that basis, and he only really begins to like Thomas because he sees that he's got this relationship with Martha, you know. And I think that Lucius has a soft spot, you know, for people in love and all these kind of things there. And so, in my opinion, he's got this funny. He sees Alfred in a funny way until he goes to his mum's house, you know. And then he sort of sees him at his mum's house, and he's like, okay, well, he's a guy that's got a mum. He loves his mum, you know. But still, I think that he's still kind of on the fence, because although he can see Alfred doing good things, he goes about it in a really aggy way.
Yeah, and I'd add to that you know, he's the beautiful morality of Lucius is that, you know, most people look at a character like Alfie or Batman for that matter and see a superhero. The glamour of violence, the mystique of violence, the power of violence is very hard to, certainly in our society, is very hard to resist. You kind of automatically give respect and admiration to people who are capable of violence. Lucius Fox has none of that. It's purely functional. Yeah, of course you can create weapons of mass destruction. You can turn a man into a weapon. That doesn't make him better. It's what are you using it for and why? So he's on some level and this carries through the whole Batman mythology. Lucius is always the linchpin of like moral sense, rational moral sense, both emotional, but also seeing clearly what humanity is here for. Yeah, that's what I like about that character specific, and it also he can tell the truth to everyone else in a funny, humorous, dry way, because as Simon indicates, he can like people, but also be very honest with them and see exactly what's wrong with them.
Awesome. Well, Jack, I wanted to bring it back to you because you mentioned earlier that, you know, a big thing that happens in the back half of season 2 is Alfie finally decides not to go to America. He has kind of that runway moment where he's in the airport and he can get on the plane and he just can't do it. That had kind of been a funny thing throughout the season, I think, for viewers, because of course we know that Alfred will go to America eventually and make a life there. And yet, you know, we know that life will involve, you know, people like Thomas and Martha and Lucius, who are all here in England in the midst of this big conflict. So I don't know if he realizes that or kind of what you think kind of prompts that decision to finally kind of give it up for now and stay where he is.
I think one of the things with any origin story is obviously you know where you end up. So we're starting very far before and we're playing with these things. So it was always, we had to understand his desires to leave. And I think killing your own father, losing your first and only love, killing your own father, I mean, that's enough. With the country that you love and the city that you love and that you're in burning, that's enough to want to get out. So it's set up that it's believable, but really, I mean, his love for Queen and country. Interestingly, you said at the very beginning about not getting involved in the war. I think similarly to Lucius, I feel like Alfred has always been, I'm not getting involved. I don't want to get involved. It's not worth it. Either side, whatever. If he was to, I feel, and he put his mind to it, he could help solve the whole conflict quite quickly. Perhaps not put it to bed, but with his set of skills, I feel confident that he'd do a fairly good job. But he doesn't want to get involved, and he wants to go. And I think the thing for me, I remember when we were doing the scene and we had to decide pretty much walking out of the terminal building of the airport, on which step does he decide he's not going to go? And I was like, you know, it's performative and he wants to go. He really wants to go, but despite that, he just can't. And it was in it. I mean, the Casablanca thing, the plane that we had, I mean, we flew a plane, which was incredible.
That's awesome.
It was a great day, but I think it was always going to turn out the way that it did. But obviously Bruno set it up so believably that he was going to go, that hopefully it's a bit of a turn.
Yeah, Bruno, is there anything you wanted to add about that?
Well, you know, exactly as Jack said, the trick with these origin stories is the audience has not just expectations but certainties about what's going to happen in the future. So you're kind of writing a song where people know the tune. You have to change the chords and little breaks that go, oh, okay, there's more to this song than I thought there was, and it's got to, but it's at the same time got to be consonant with these. With the nature of the characters. Yes, it was inevitable and it was set up that way. I mean, for God's sake, he's in the club and they're singing "We'll Meet Again." What a bastard he would be if the next episode was he's in New York eating steaks with showgirls around. I'm fucking glad I got out of that England mess. You got to find ways to bring the audience to the place that they wanted to get to, but in unexpected ways. but I would say moving forward, we've still, you know, and this is not to juice season 3, but season 3 will start to explain in much more detail the dramatic events that. It's not so much moving to, you know, the question for me is not why does he move to America, but why does he become a loyal, like, servant or loyal companion to the Wayne family. Something has to happen, that because right now you see he'll go with, you know, he's self-directed. He'll go what's best for him and his family ultimately. But ultimately he makes a kind of very chivalric, a knightly with a K oath to protect this family. And you know how we get there is the meat of the story, and the meat of the story is also coming up, which is no spoilers, but the end of this season you'll see the world changing in very radical ways that are leading us towards a world in which characters like Batman and Joker and all of those larger than life characters can exist. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that thank you for that.
Awesome, Christian. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. A little look ahead feels like the perfect place to wrap up this discussion. So thank you guys so much for joining me to discuss season 2. And thank you to everybody watching. Pennyworth season 2 still has a few episodes to air on EPIX, and be sure to check out the rest of WonderCon 2021 panels. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
And you guys. See you all soon, I hope. Lots of love.
See you soon. Take care.